Delly, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are y'all?
Okay. All right. Not as
How are
bad
you
as I
doing?
thought you were going to sound.
Doing well.
Life outside the SEC. You saw it up close this weekend. What'd you think about Big 12 football?
Yeah, man. I was trying to think of the last time I covered a non-SEC like major college football game. It's been a long, long time, and it was cool. It was a unique environment over here with the state fair, like around kind of dropped right in the middle of a football game, and the funnel cakes and just all the rides, and it was interesting, and it was a great game. Of course, it was really cool to see the crowd is like split exactly 50-50, and you got the burnt orange and the crimson, and so it was it was a good to kind of get out of SEC country a little bit and see something new, and I saw a a typical Big 12 game, I guess you might say.
Yeah, you did. Did you eat any typical state fair wares, though? Did you eat fried butter?
No, no, I didn't. I
What-
did walk around the fair a little bit. Ran into a OU fan that had an airbrushed shirt that said "Fire Mike Stoops," so that was funny, and obviously he got his wish.
Wow, yeah. Very disappointed in you, though, Ross. Not good journalism, not being able to bring us back a boots on the ground report about the fried butter. Talking to Ross Dellenger
Working on
here.
that physique.
Yeah, I mean, Ross is jacked, though. He
Yes.
works out enough where he could eat some fried butter. Okay, it's one day. Don't give him an excuse.
He's got a cheat day.
Now working for Sports Illustrated. Ross, did you get to watch this LSU Florida game?
The very end, really. I didn't watch anything outside of probably the last two drives because at that point I was done writing and the OU Texas game was well over. But I've heard enough to put together what happened, and I the thing is, if somebody would have told me before the game that LSU would have scored 19 points, I would have thought they would have won.
Me too.
That's one of I couldn't imagine Florida's offense scoring more than 14 or 17 points against Dave Aranda's unit. So that's the thing that really jumps out at me was 215 yards rushing and 27 points. And I know that 7 of it came on the pick six, but still, I was surprised that Florida moved the ball like it did, and for a second straight year, you kind of credit Dan Mullen.
Yeah, I think to me that's what I missed completely in the run up to this game. Florida's running backs and their offensive line were the separating factor that I did not give nearly enough credit. So now you have LSU at 5-1, Ross. They're staring down a terrifying upcoming slate of games. Like, where do you think? Where does LSU go from here? Like, does this get really bad? Do they bounce back? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a tough slate of games coming up. There's no doubt that Georgia at home, Mississippi State at home, and they're kind of back on track a little bit. And then we got the bye week before hosting Alabama. So that's a rough month, and I think I'm sure there's a lot going on in the football building. Defensively, LSU's got to get more pressure on the quarterback. I saw some of the numbers. I think my replacement, Brooks Kubina, tweeted him out after the game. Was five. Florida had 5 sacks in I don't know 6 to 8 tackles for loss or something like that, and then LSU had 0 sacks and 1 or 2 tackles for loss.
Yeah.
That's just shocking, and so they got to get pressure on the quarterback. They're going to have to do that against Georgia because Georgia will just move down the field with Fromm. I mean, they don't pressure him a little more, and they've got a solid running game as well. So they can't allow 215 yards rushing. That's for sure. So those things have to get fixed, and I'm sure Dave Aranda will fix them. That's the thing. You have confidence in Dave Aranda just based on all the things you hear and have seen about Dave Aranda and how he handles himself. You would think he's in the so-called lab, if you will, making those fixes. Offensively, LSU's just. I think they've. I didn't see enough offensively against Florida to give me confidence that they can score more than a couple touchdowns against Georgia and Alabama. And that's kind of the scary part. And the Mississippi State too, for that matter. They've got a pretty strong defense as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't feel too strong about that offensive line going against any of those three teams that you mentioned after what Polite and Jefferson and those guys did to them the other day. It was brutal. So, Ross, speaking of Mississippi State, though, they handle Auburn. This is an Auburn team that had major red flags going in. Seems like their season's just getting worse and worse. Do you think, before season's end, are you going to be in Auburn covering one of the craziest meltdown, we should fire the coaches situation ever?
That's been the surprise certainly of the SEC this year, if not the nation for me, is how Auburn looks. Started out as a top 10 team and crept their way even closer to the top 5 after a win over Washington, and a senior starting quarterback, a veteran guy. Consistent, solid, in a coach who knows how to coach offensive football, and a defense that returned a lot of really good players, and that's been the surprise for me. So I can't imagine the trigger being pulled on Gus Malzahn after getting that big hefty contract not too long ago. But you never know in the SEC, man. So
Is
maybe
Alabama
I will be over there?
Right, they're pretty crazy about their college football.
Ross Dellenger joining us here, 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge, 100.3 ESPN Radio. Have you gone up to Athens and got around this Georgia team?
No, I have not. I've been to Athens covering games before, but not with this Georgia team. And I'll tell you this, I've watched them enough, though, to tell you that they're not unbeatable. They're not like Alabama or anything. They don't look necessarily as on the same level as even Ohio State. Or before this weekend, I would have told you even in Oklahoma, they're definitely not unbeatable. And if Georgia plays like it played in a couple of games this year, one I can think of at Missouri, LSU can absolutely beat them. And that's the thing, is that there's a kind of golden opportunity here for LSU to kind of expose Georgia, kind of like LSU got exposed at Florida. Georgia's very beatable.
Delly, enjoy your trip home. Thanks for the time this morning.
All right, guys.
All right, Delly.